Okay, check mic, check mic. Harvest and Carbo Grow Photosynthesis Enhancers adalah teknologi untuk menangani ketidakcekapan proses fotosintesis. Harvest mengandungi nanoteknologi karbon yang boleh membantu tumbuhan untuk menyerap lebih banyak cahaya. Ia juga mampu mengurangkan perbelanjaan utiliti, pertanian dan membantu mengoptimumkan
that I need.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Before we begin, I would like to invite everyone who are still outside the hall to kindly make your way into the hall as we're starting soon. And a couple of announcements. Number one is, of course, to Yang berusaha Puan Zulira Abu Bakar, Ketua Pegawai Eksekutif Meranti, Pegawai-pegawai kanan Mosti, pengurusan tertinggi jabatan-jabatan dan agensi kerajaan, barisan speaker jemputan, rakan-rakan media, tuan-tuan dan puan-puan yang dihormati sekalian. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, salam sejahtera dan salam Malaysia Madani. Bagi pihak Musti, kami ingin mengucapkan selamat datang ke Sidang Kemuncak Tahun Pengkomersialan Malaysia 2023 atau lebih dikenali sebagai Malaysia Commercialisation Year MCY Summit 2023. Tepukan kepada pihak Musti. A round of applause to Musti, ladies and gentlemen. Tepukan kepada pihak Musti kerana sekali lagi menjayakan persidangan ini. Baiklah, sebelum kita meneruskan majlis, izinkan saya mempersilakan Yang Berusaha Encik Muhammad Mukri bin Abdullah Zawawi dari Meranti untuk memimpin bacaan doa. Dipersilakan.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillahirabbil alamin. Wassalatu wassalamu ala asyrafil anbiya'i wal mursalin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajmain. Ya Rabbana lakal hamdu kama yanbaghi li jalali wajhikal karimi wa azimi sultanik. Ya Allah, ya Rahman, ya Rahim, kami menzahirkan rasa kesyukuran atas segala nikmat yang telah Engkau berikan. Maka dengan keizinanmu, acara Sidang Kemuncak Malaysia Commercialisation Year 2023 pada hari ini dapat kami laksanakan. Justru, naungilah majlis kami pada hari ini dengan rahmat dan keberkatan, terhindar daripada musibah dan ujian. Ya Allah, ya Rahim, limpahkanlah kepada negara kami nikmat keamanan yang berkekalan, dikurniakan para pemimpin yang adil, prihatin, amanah dan beriman. Juga rakyat yang setia kepada negara, lagi bertakwa kepada Tuhan. Dihindari daripada kemaksiatan, jenayah, rasuah dan kezaliman. Engkau jauhkanlah juga kami daripada bala bencana, perpecahan, permusuhan dan wabak penyakit yang memusnahkan. Terus memajukan dunia ini dengan teknologi yang mampan, berteraskan keteguhan iman dan kekal menjaga adat ketimuran, agar rakyat dan negara kami mendapat manfaat dan kesejahteraan yang berpanjangan. Dan jadikanlah negara kami yang berteraskan wadah Malaysia Madani yang harmoni sebagai negara yang makmur lagi diberkati Tuhan. Rabbana atina fid dunya hasanah wa fil akhirati hasanah wa qina azabannar. Wa sallallahu ala sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam walhamdulillahi rabbil alamin.
Terima kasih Encik Muhammad Mukri. Para hadirin sekalian, untuk mengetahui pengisian penganjuran MCY Summit 2023 secara lebih mendalam, izinkan saya mempersilakan Ketua Setiausaha Musti yang berbahagia, Datuk Teknologis Dr. Haji Hamiduddin bin Hasim untuk menyampaikan ucapan alu-aluan beliau. Silakan Datuk.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Terima kasih pengacara majlis. Yang berhormat Chang Leh Kam, Menteri Sains, Teknologi dan Inovasi, my boss. Yang berhormat Rafizi Ramli, Menteri Ekonomi, also my boss. Dan agak bajet ni. Yang bahagia Datuk Teknologis Dr. Muhammad Nur Azman Hassan, TKSU Pembangunan Teknologi, yang berusaha Puan Ruziah Syafi'i, TKSU Perancangan dan Pemberdayaan Sains Mosti, yang berusaha Puan Zulira Abu Bakar, CEO Meranti, pegawai-pegawai kanan kerajaan yang dapat hadir pada hari ini, barisan speaker jemputan, our esteemed speakers, rakan-rakan media, tuan-tuan dan puan-puan yang dihormati sekalian. Alhamdulillah, bersyukur kita kehadiran Allah SWT kerana dengan izinnya dapat kita sama-sama pada pagi ini dalam majlis pelancaran sidang kemuncak tahun Pengkomersialan Malaysia MCY Summit 2023. Dan saya juga ingin mengambil peluang ini mengucapkan selamat datang kepada semua dan juga merakamkan ucapan penghargaan kepada seluruh warga Mosti dan agensi-agensi serta rakan-rakan yang telah bertungkus lumus menjayakan program ini, khususnya kepada Sekretariat MCY. Mosti melalui sinergi bersama para penyelidik, para inovator, para usahawan teknologi telah memperkasakan pelaksanaan inisiatif Tahun Pengkomersialan Malaysia ataupun MCY, Malaysia Commercialisation Year, yang dilaksanakan sejak tahun 2016. MCY bertujuan melonjakkan lagi pengkomersialan hasil penyelidikan, pembangunan dan juga inovasi R&D&I yang khususnya dibiayai oleh kerajaan untuk menembusi pasaran tempatan, kemudiannya ke global. Sejak tahun 2016 sehingga kini, pelbagai program fasilitasi intervensi yang telah kita jalankan di bawah platform MCY seperti sesi bimbingan, pitching, pendanaan, penyertaan dalam pameran dan juga expo bagi meningkatkan lagi aktiviti pengkomersialan hasil R&D&I tempatan. Para penyelidik, inovator dan usahawan teknologi perlu melalui proses saringan melalui siri-siri bengkel due diligence yang diadakan setiap tahun untuk dinilai tahap kesediaan teknologi produk teknologi dan juga perkhidmatan bagi menentukan jenis fasilitasi ataupun interventions yang sesuai dan tahap pengkomersialan. Sehingga tahun lepas 2022 sejumlah 1,110 produk ataupun teknologi dan juga perkhidmatan telah melalui proses due diligence ini. Pelaksanaan bengkel due diligence ini akan diteruskan sebagai usaha pengurusi dalam mengenal pasti hasil R&D&I yang dibiayai kerajaan dan memenuhi kriteria untuk disenaraikan sebagai KPI khas MCY. Setelah disenaraikan sebagai KPI khas MCY, produk tersebut, teknologi dan perkhidmatan tersebut ni akan kita nilai bantu selanjutnya oleh panel untuk menentukan penerimaan anugerah MCY. Seterusnya, produk, teknologi dan perkhidmatan ini juga berpeluang untuk menyertai pelbagai program pembangunan kapasiti, aktiviti padanan, perniagaan dan juga promosi yang dijalankan oleh MOSTI ataupun pihak-pihak berkepentingan lain. Dan kadang-kadang kita salurkan kepada agensi-agensi ataupun benda-benda kerajaan yang akan mengadakan program-program yang serupa. Inisiatif ini adalah selari dengan tagline MOSTI, merakyatkan sains dan menginsankan teknologi. Bagi meningkatkan lagi visibility produk, teknologi ataupun perkhidmatan kepada bakal pelabur dan juga pemain industri, portal MCY telah dinaik taraf dengan tambahan modul business directory dan juga business matching bagi melaksanakan padanan perniagaan dan meningkatkan lagi keboleh pasaran di peringkat tempatan dan juga global. MCY telah mengorak langkah ke arah MCY 3.0 dengan menekankan kepada inisiatif pengkomersialan R&D&I ke peringkat global melalui MCY Goes Global yang akan mempertingkatkan lagi usaha bagi membantu hasil R&D&I tempatan menembusi pasaran antarabangsa. Kejayaan yang dicapai dalam MCY 2.0 akan diteruskan kesinambungannya dalam MCY 3.0 sehingga tahun 2025. Seiring dengan matlamat MCY 3.0, MOSTI telah menyertai pameran serta expo antarabangsa bersama syarikat-syarikat KPI khas MCY. Secara keseluruhannya, 411 syarikat ataupun institusi telah menyertai 14 pameran di dalam ataupun di luar negara dan menerima sebanyak 2,139 business inquiry serta 4,971 business leads pada tahun 2022. Melalui penyertaan-penyertaan ini, kita harap dapat membantu syarikat-syarikat tempatan untuk mendapatkan lagi akses pasaran antarabangsa serta menjana pulangan pelaburan dan perdagangan. Berkaitan dengan MCY Summit 2023, MCY Summit kali ini dilaksanakan bersama Meranti selaku rakan strategik dengan tema Supercharge Your Way to Impact yang akan berlangsung selama 2 hari, hari ini dan hari esok, dan Meranti bertindak sebagai pusat senti bagi pengkomersialan dan pemindahan teknologi di bawah inisiatif Technology Commercialization Accelerator TCA. Banyak program, pelbagai program menarik telah disusun sepanjang 2 hari ini seperti pameran, pocket talk, persidangan, pitching dan juga padanan perniagaan dalam memastikan semua pihak mendapat manfaat yang maksimum serta berimpak tinggi. Dan kita mensasarkan 5,000 pengunjung ke MCY kali ini yang melibatkan lebih kurang 60 pempamer produk, teknologi dan perkhidmatan hasil R&D&I tempatan. Saya amat kagum dengan hasil R&D&I tempatan yang begitu kreatif yang dijangka boleh meningkatkan lagi kualiti hidup rakyat Malaysia selaras dengan teras daya cipta dalam Malaysia Madani. Akhir kata, sekali lagi saya ingin mengucapkan ribuan terima kasih dan mengharapkan komitmen serta sokongan daripada semua pihak berkepentingan dalam ekosistem pengkomersialan agar segala perancangan yang ditetapkan mencapai objektif dan berjalan lancar. Besarlah harapan Musti agar platform yang disediakan ini boleh dimanfaatkan sepenuhnya sebagai wadah untuk para penggubal dasar, pembiaya, penyelidik, usahawan, pelabur dan juga pengguna membina jaringan yang strategik bagi merancangkan lagi aktiviti pengkomersialan produk R&D negara. Bulat air kerana pembentung, bulat manusia kerana muafakat. Semoga kita semua dapat bekerjasama dengan lebih erat dalam menghadapi segala cabaran ke arah membina sebuah negara bangsa yang maju, bersatu padu, sejahtera dan berteknologi tinggi menjelang tahun 2030. Sekalian, wabillahi taufiq wal hidayah. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi taala wabarakatuh.
Terima kasih Yang Berbahagia Datuk Teknologis Dr. Haji Aminuddin bin Hasim, Ketua Setiausaha Musti. Baiklah hadirin yang dihormati sekalian, seterusnya tibalah masa untuk sesi dialog menteri dan memandangkan sidang kemuncak ini juga dihadiri oleh delegasi antarabangsa. Sesi dialog menteri ini akan dikendalikan dalam bahasa Inggeris. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, one of the key highlights for MCY 2023 is the ministerial dialogue on the topic of the economics of innovation, a whole of government approach towards innovation perpetuity. So this session brings together the Minister of Economy and the Minister of Musti, where they're going to discuss and strategize on how to accelerate Malaysia's economic growth towards perpetual innovation. And this is done through effective integration of science, technology, and innovation. So this session aims to foster collaboration between the two ministries. And I believe this is not the first collaboration that Musti and Minister of Economy has done. So we're going to delve more into this after this. So without further ado, allow me to invite Yang Berhormat Tuan Chang Lee Kang, the Minister of Musti, and Yang Berhormat Tuan Rafizi Ramli, the Minister of Economy. They got in and straight to the job. Once again, thank you so much, Yang Berhormat. Yang Berhormat, thank you so much for joining us. We know how hectic your schedules are, especially coming this week. So a lot has been discussed, of course, over the years. And this is not your first collaboration, as we've mentioned, but it's, of course, an interesting dynamics when you combine two really powerful ministries and the potential that you can unveil to the innovators and the whole ecosystem as a whole. So, YB Chang, if I can start with you. 2 years ago, we have launched the National Policy on Science, Technology and Innovation, and there are key index percentage that goes with that, with the gross rate for innovation. So how far have we come since then?
Okay, thank you very much. Just first of all, before starting, I would like to thank everyone for attending this MCY Summit 2023, especially YB Rafizi. Despite his very busy schedule, but there's a reason why we invite him here, because this is 2 days before budget screening. So, okay, we come back to GERD, government expenditure on R&D. Of course, if you look at the numbers today, you see a very bleak picture. But if you ask me whether we are on track, I will say yes. Our target is 3.5% of GRD by 2030. Now is 2023. We have another 7 years to go. And of course, from 1% to 3.5 is something, it's a tall order, I would say, but it's doable. Just to share with all of you today, all of you here today, in fact, in the cabinet, this was discussed, and the Prime Minister himself has committed that this government is going to increase GRD. So I think the most important thing is how to work together with all the government institution, government research institution, and also our higher learning institution, and also like our agencies like Academic Science Malaysia, etc., to work hand in hand to increase our growth in time to come. And of course, Economy Ministry also play a very important role. So we hope in coming budgets, maybe gradually, we can slowly increase our expenditure in R&D, because it's very important. I can give you an example. If you look at how much other countries spend on R&D, then you can see whether it will create a good outcome. For instance, Korea is spending 4.5%, 4.55, and Israel also 4.5-ish. So you look at the level of their technology and also innovation development. Of course, they are way ahead of us, and this is not by luck, because this is how they spend their money on R&D. And if you look at private corporation also, you can see how people succeed. For instance, Huawei spend about 12 to 15% every year. For the past 2-3 years, they're spending even more on R&D because of the sanction. So I think you can see how successful they are, and it's not by luck. So this is my some of my view on growth. Okay, but the most important thing is we are on track. Okay, thank
YB
you.
Rafizi, YB Chang mentioned funding 3 times when he was answering the first question. You have posed this question a couple of months ago. Let's just retract it back to startups. You have a very sound background from startups. Is it really funding, or is it the product?
It's both. But I think we tend to focus on just one every time we want to justify why we are not where we should have been. And it's a lot easier in our society to blame it on funding. But it's actually both, you know. And I wouldn't say it's a chicken and egg issue, but we have to work hand in hand together. And that's why the ecosystem is more important than rather how much you spend or whether we give enough assistance or not. And after all, everything that we will discuss here, everything about the kind of economy that we want to grow, it all comes back to innovation. And in my view, and having gone through this myself, trying to prove that, because just for the benefits of some of our colleagues from overseas, for example, I started my career in huge corporations, managing billions of budgets year after year. So up to a certain point in my life, about 6-7 years ago, I said, first I wanted to learn about the digital economy, about startups. It was exciting. So I took a break from politics and threw myself a challenge, which was how difficult could it have been. You know, it's like, surely if you run multinational type of operation, you could have pulled a startup quite quickly. It wasn't easy because we operate in a completely different environment and the challenges are different. But it all comes back to innovation, you know. And necessity is always the mother of all innovation. So it's always about the sweet spot between having an ecosystem, and by that it means the funding, the technical capability, the mindset, the culture acceptance to commercialization and to new ideas, to risk-taking, is always about having just the right level of each and everything, so that on the one hand, we challenge our players enough for them to step up and to think big and to strive for it without being complacent, yet at the same time we don't suffocate them because they just don't know where to start. And I think that's where hopefully MOSTI, my ministry, KKD, MOF, these are the 4 ministries that are involved in the whole ecosystem. Hopefully we can do better. Funding is good, but we also have to be careful not to create that complacency, because then it will create a sense of entitlement. Just because I think I'm smarter than others and I throw some jargons, therefore I deserve this much and that much. Because it's a sure way to make sure that we are stuck with just thinking and proof of concept and never ever go to the market. Because without going to the market, and the proof of the pudding is really about how the product can grow and scale up in the market. So finally, if I pass you back, I know Lee Kang keeps on mentioning about funding and budget. Just for clarity, my ministry has the custodianship of the funding for development expenditure. So it's like he's been pitching on the stage for the last 10 minutes. So basically, funding, grants, everything, it will come to my ministry and we'll have an overview about everything. What we want to do is to strike that balance between being extremely supportive, creating the ecosystem, yet not creating an entitled mindset among our players. Because at the end of the day, you have to succeed in the market. And no amount of government funding will be successful unless it comes with the right product market fit.
That's something to be thought of by any innovators in our room here. Can you have your hands up? Innovators? Well, okay, maybe they're all at the innovation booth. YB Chang, we talked a lot about the conducive ecosystem, perpetual innovation. What exactly does MOSTI aspire to include or encompass in this inclusive or conducive ecosystem for innovation?
Well, I think Rafizi has mentioned just now, it's not all about funding, but conducive ecosystem is even more important. In fact, what MOSTI can do is to connect all the dots. As many other ministries or agencies, usually people work in silo. They are just thinking about their own products, their own research, etc. But seldom we work together and we just conveniently ignore the power of cooperation and collaboration. So I think MOSTI can play this role, and of course, in terms of policy facilitation, we also play a big role. Besides funding, because we have seen a lot of good products, good innovation, but a lot of people are just hoping to get government funds for them to continue in their research or developing their products. But just to share with all of you here, government fund is very limited, and for us, we can't fund every single good product or good innovation. We can only fund some of the products or some of the innovations, and we hope it could be a success story for the government. So that is why a lot of you who are good, very good in your field, who have created good products, but still you couldn't get fund because resources are scarce. Besides funding, what do we do? As I say, policy facilitation. For instance, we just launched My STI in June. What is My STI? Basically, My STI is to help our local technology startup, homegrown technology, to be prioritized in government procurement. Of course, our tech startup, if they might have good products, they might have good innovation, but in terms of commercialization, in terms of price advantage, maybe you can't fight MNCs who are there and they have economy of skill, who are there for years. So we launched My STI, and it's a pilot. We are piloting with 10 ministries, so that if we have a procurement, and that procurement we have good local tech startup, we prioritize because this is the way to help local startup, because in the startup ecosystem there are a lot of complaints about homegrown technology not being recognized by the government, but recognized by other government. Then only they come back, then only they flourish after they got recognized by foreign government. So I think government should play a bigger role in helping our startup. So this is how we improve our startup ecosystem.
So, YB Rafizi, if I may ask, from what YB Chang has said just now, how do you link what's lined up in the 12th Malaysia plan and we link it to the national science policy?
We obviously have ambitions that we have to grow at a certain speed, GDP-wise. We have to change the composition of our workforce away from low skill and semi-skill to higher skill. So at the apex of it, obviously, we can only do this if our economy is driven more and more by innovation. So that's given. I mean, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to tell that anyone who plans for the economy to drive and harness the value of innovation and of technology-based companies. Of course, our challenge in so many years is that we've had this in our policy forever. But every time we go from one 5-year plan to another, if you're not careful, we tend to be dragged down by the details and specifics of why it was difficult. So we got bogged down, basically. So we don't have a problem in terms of the aspirations. We have a problem in terms of pulling everything together. And this is where I've always been quite apprehensive if every time we talk about innovation, startups, digital and technology-based economy, we look at it from top down. It has to change, that it has to work from bottom up. It's the kind of people who on day-to-day basis is intrigued and inspired by how they could do things better. And there will always be a market when you have a viable product, even at the lowest level. You know, I give you one example. Malaysia's businesses, the largest composition of Malaysia's businesses and enterprises are basically F&B, food and beverages. Small stalls here and there, small F&B outlets. If you go to YouTube and you compare the kind of small innovation that our peers in this region had been able to roll out at the lowest level of society, there's a big gap. We are still doing things, the same thing, the same processes at F&B outlets for the last 30, 40 years. Whereas our friends in Thailand, in Indonesia, they have really started using small machines here and there. Now, that propel the kind of mentality and eagerness that breaks the barrier, the mindset that innovation is actually quite easy to do. And then the funding for those kinds of innovation is a lot smaller than the kind of fundings that we start talking at the highest level of government. So we have to fix that, and fixing that means it has to involve as many people as possible, the small people all over the place. And this is where it has always been a challenge for policymakers, and therefore, if we are not careful, it's very easy to fall into the trappings. And the biggest trapping is these two phrases that I think a lot of people who have dealt with me are so sick and tired, because I kept repeating it, especially during budget review, which is number one, we have to move the needle. Whatever we do, whatever funding, whatever initiative, the collective sum has to move the needle, because otherwise we repeat what most probably we have been doing at government agencies, at research institutions, at ministries, which is we tick the boxes. So long as we can tell ourselves that I've done enough because this is, it meets policy, it falls and align with the national policies on science, on economy, so long as I spend this amount of money and I tick boxes and we tell ourselves that we are good, when it's not really pervasive because on the ground, because it doesn't move the needle. And therefore, the design of policy, all the way from programs and initiatives, even all the way to funding, must always prioritize scale over everything else. The design has to be able to answer this question. Is this going to be scalable? How are we going to scale it? How many people will be brought into this ecosystem? And I think if and when we do this, then we have a higher chance to succeed, because it's one whole nation approach. Everyone is involved and is no longer confined to this hall or some people who just happen to be in a position to work on innovation. So that's I think our challenge, and that's what we are trying to address, and that's how we've gone a bit more unconventional lately. Mosti and my ministry have been looking at ways at how we want to get more people involved and break down this mental block that innovation is something very difficult to do, because the best of innovation usually starts very small and it has that pervasive effect of bringing as many people as possible into it. Until we get there, then there's always the question of how much money government is pumping into the economy to spearhead innovation, when what should have happened is that government's funding is catalytic in an environment where there's already enough private funding because it makes business sense. And that's hopefully how we will align, and we will focus through budget review especially. So I'm sorry if I'm a lot harsher on what can be spent or not spending. I'm all for spending, but get the best value of it so that it's scalable and we can see immediate impact on the ground.
YB Chang, would you like to add on to what YB Rafizi said? Because there's also the Global Innovation Index competitiveness that Malaysia aims to improve, and the target is top 20 by 2025. So what would you like to add on to what YB Rafizi has said?
In fact, I don't know who made this target.
Most probably my ministry.
20 out of how many though?
Because it's quite it's not impossible, but it's a tall order, I would say, because in the past 10 years, we have been hovering at 30s, in the 30, 34, 36. So in 2 years' time, to achieve top 20 is not easy, but it's possible. I think if you are, I mean, if you are aware and if you are familiar with government culture, the government agency culture, you know, we are all working in silo, sometimes very territorial, and this is not good for this GII, this Global Innovation Index, because this is cross-ministry, and it's not only by MOSTI, although we are the coordinating ministry, but this GII has more than 80 indicators, and across all ministries, including Ministry of Education, Ministry of Higher Education, Ministry of Human Resources, and whatnot. So mostly, what we can do is we need to pull everyone together, work together, and to monitor where are the indicators that we can improve. For instance, I just mentioned we can improve in terms of GRD, government expenditure on R&D, and we also could improve in other ways by connecting all the related ministries. For instance, education and higher education on STEM education, because GII also put a very, I would say, a lot of weightage on talent, technology-related talent. So this is how we can work together, and I hope with the new government we will have a new culture, so that in time to come, not only in monitoring GII, but also in other areas, all ministries can work together without thinking that, oh, you are intruding into my territory, because this is, I would say, this is bad for the country. Yeah.
YB Chang and maybe Rafizi, maybe you both can answer this. Regardless of, you know, there were changes of government back then, but let's just say you, YB Chang, is reassigned to another ministry after this. There comes the legacy continuation. You know, another minister comes in, oh, I want to have this rule. So that perpetual word that we keep talking about, that sometimes, even when there's no government change, when there's a minister change, the continuity of a certain project or a certain plan sometimes get impacted along the way, either a good way or a bad way. Maybe YB Rafizi could give some comment on this.
It's in any organization, this is not unique to government, to be frank, you know. For those of you who come, especially larger organizations, bosses come and go, and you can always compare two types of bosses. First, they come and go, and they just see themselves as a quick win turnaround manager. So they focus on rebranding, they focus on showing huge impact financially or operationally in the beginning. But if those changes are not institutionalized, either in terms of policies, frameworks, and more importantly, it's not cascaded down to the organizations in terms of higher sense of purpose, then it's not permanent. It moves on, the whole thing collapses, and the new guys will come, and that process continues. It's the same, basically, in the private sector. So it's a function of a sound policy framework that survives administrations. And you can only have it if it delivers results and it's altruistic in nature. Is because it is for the good of the nation that this policy framework makes sense, because it's difficult for anyone who comes after you to argue against it, because there's nothing for vested interest in it. it benefits as many people as possible, and is translated into a higher macro numbers. So that's very important to me. A sound policy framework must be altruistic in nature for it to survive successive administration. And by altruistic, it also means it is as inclusive as possible, and that's why you need to bring as many agencies, stakeholders into it. Because then when people feel that they have a stake in it, then it's in their best interest to defend and grow it. So that's in terms of policy design. But the other part that I think is more challenging and more out of our control when administration change is that the minister who comes must be passionate about it. It's not just a job assignment. It has to be because it is his or her area of expertise. It is something that he or she believes in, and therefore he or she, when we inherit a good and sound policy framework, we will continue to drive it at the same pace as our predecessors have. And we spend less time politicking and picking just to differentiate and to avoid reinventing the wheel. We spend more time adding success to it layer after layer, so that from one administration to another, you then get the momentum that was intended when the policy was first crafted. And I hope this administration resets the whole approach to continuity in policy, because I think we are younger. We want to retire early.
Relatively.
Yeah, and therefore most probably we will spend more time being a private member of society, being on the outside. A reminder to myself and Lee Kang, it is in our best interest to make sure that we leave a good policy framework, prove that it can be done, so that people who come after us will continue, because otherwise we will be cursed for many, many years when we cannot do anything because we are on the outside. And I've seen enough that one of the things that I don't think any ministers would want to do in any administration is to keep coming back to fix things that you didn't fix the first time around. So, and there's also a personal dimension to it. If we do this, and I think people who come after us will just grow, and that's how nation is built. And you know, it's my responsibility, and Lee Kang and the other ministers being a lot younger, to prove that it can be done, that you can leave a good job, a good policy, you can inspire people in your team and people who come after you, so that you can retire peacefully and know when to leave when the time comes.
Can I just share a little bit on this? I think policy continuity and perpetuity is very important, especially in a ministry like MOSTI, because we are dealing with science and technology, and there should be a political. Just to share with all of you, most of the roadmaps that is in place now, that are in place now, it's not done by me. It's not even launched by me. It's from who? Well, I wouldn't say it's from who, because in the past 5 years I have 3 predecessors. So in science and technology, we shouldn't be competing on, oh, this is my baby or this is your baby, but we just need to focus in what is good for the country, what is good for the nation. Well, as Rafizi has rightly put it, I don't want to be cursed after I leave office. Thank you.
And I'm sure our Secretary General, Deputy Secretary General have seen enough journeys for them to continue to champion what the ministries have done. Wei Chang, still to revert to what you said just now, how much of your own ideas that you get to contribute to enrich these policies that have been laid down for you?
How much of
Yeah, how much of your own ideas or your own policies, being in MOSTI, how much of your own ideas and aspirations that you get to contribute so far to enrich this policy that was given?
Well, for the past 7 months, I'm I'm very happy working with the very able team in MOSTI, and I wouldn't say anything is the only. I'm the only source of the idea because in science and technology and innovation, especially, there is no idea solely from one person. It's from the team. So I'm lucky, I'm fortunate to have an able team in the ministry, and of course there are some focus areas that I would like to work on. For instance, my STI is good, is a good one, and I'm really passionate about it. And there are also some initiative that is not launched by me or is not ideated by me, but I think it's good. Like for instance, the TCA, Tech Commercialization Accelerator, and also the NTIS National Technology and Innovation Sandbox. I think those are good initiatives, and for sure I'm going to continue with this initiative. So I can't say I own any idea, but so far everything that we do is a concerted effort and a teamwork from my ministry. Thank you.
YB Cheng and YB Rafizi, you both came in just after we just sort of not recovered, trying to come back up again after the pandemic. How do you think this has affected the innovation industry, especially from the Minister of Economy, with people lining up asking for assistance?
Well, the best thing that ever come out of COVID is for innovation. It was very difficult to change society's behavior, but the pandemic really had changed a lot of things. I sounded harsh, I think, to the public sector if we were to take credit too much for the rate of digitalization in the last 2 years. Because yes, government have policies, yes, governments move here and there, but by and large, it was a pandemic. The pandemic forced us to rethink and behave differently. And suddenly, years and years of public sector's efforts to bring about awareness, about adoption, about digitalization, about innovation, when people were forced to go through it, many things that were not possible before is possible. Take, for example, B2B products. It was very difficult prior to pandemic to convince SMEs especially to digitalize or to adopt some of the platforms, SaaS-related platforms, because they see technology and digital products as something too expensive, too complicated, and they are too busy running on day-to-day basis. Their business is about survival on day-to-day basis. But as they acclimatize to this, I suppose a lot of the SMEs themselves started to see the value in changing the way that they operate. So the challenge is an opportunity, because on the one hand, we've moved from talking about awareness to a stage where we want to capture the opportunity created out of COVID to accelerate, commercialization, adoption better. But there lies also other challenges, because we have a fired up startup founders and inventors who think that they have 1 billion Bezos idea. So everyone thinks they can be Jeff Bezos, and it's quite difficult to tell people that it's a lot more difficult than what you say. Having an idea is a good start, but there's a series of enablers and capabilities that we need to acquire ourselves before you can convince a venture capitalist or a government agency to fund you. So that's why we have to be able to streamline existing policies, respond to the surge in interest in innovation and digitalization and startups, because we cannot lose this opportunity. It's very difficult for public sector to widen participation to get a much wider talent pool, because that was our problem before. Our talent pool was very small. And then because of the success rate is also very small, all the way from ideation to proof of concept, to funding your prototype, to getting to MVP, to go to the market, to scaling up, and to go to new markets. That is very difficult, and you have to walk down this, valley of death, of making sure that your product and your innovation at least survive a financially viable stage before it can scale up. Most startups or most innovations basically died in that valley of death. And in the case of Malaysia in the past, we started with a small pool to begin with, so most people died there, and therefore it was very difficult to see one or two that ever went off. Now that we have a much larger pool, because we have a much higher interest, and people think that, I can do this, I can understand why we should do certain things, and they want to have a go at it. So we've solved the pool issue, hopefully, and we can only grow that pool bigger and bigger. Now we have to harness this through the right programs, the right mentality, the right enablers, so that we can start having more that pass through the valley of death, and then our whole ecosystem can be aligned to the right stages with the right programs and funding. And that's exactly what we are doing. Mostly my ministry, KKD, and all the other agencies have been at each other's throat for the last 2 months, trying to streamline into one single window. Because that is important, to align and dedicate the right agency and the right programs at the right stage and for the right reason, so that we have this functioning funnel all the way from the right pool to the right, valley of that stage to graduating into the market. And this is possible because of that 2 years pandemic. And I look back to that 2 years is perhaps a pivotal moment in our journey towards innovation and having more startups. But we don't have much time. We need to tap into the excitement and have early successes, so that then we can grow the pool and we can retain the interest in the years to come.
Which is why MCY is great, because not only you celebrate innovators, you get to see all these cutting-edge, revolutionary products and services and innovations. YB, you're walking down the exhibition grounds just now, all these award-winning, innovators, they have a lot to offer. But how do we expand a lot more when it comes to maybe ASEAN integration?
Yeah, of course. Global prominence is also one of our target. You see, if you are good, we hope to help help you to flourish. And helping you to flourish doesn't mean we only linking you up with the local market. But I think global market is also very important, especially, science technology is quite borderless nowadays, and we don't only look at one particular country's market. So global collaboration is very important as well. And I think in terms of ASEAN, our main platform for collaboration in science, technology and innovation is the ASEAN Committee on Science, Technology and Innovation, COSTI. And besides that, we also have this ASEAN Young Scientist Network. The networking is very important because, well, as we time and again we keep saying that funding is, I mean, you don't rely entirely on government funding because government funding is limited, and in fact there are much bigger funds outside, and private fund, VCs, etc. So we should be looking at that instead of just focusing in applying government fund. So I think ASEAN collaboration would help our innovators to link up with VCs, not only local VCs but also overseas VCs, so that if their product is good, if they are good in their presentation and pitching, they could get much more fund rather than just focusing in a small pool of government fund.
Now, earlier on, when it was mentioned by Wabi Rafizi that sometimes science and technology seems to be like something out of reach from a large group of the masses, if I may just use this remaining 5 minutes to ask about your recent collaboration, you and on ground, for those of you who are not from Malaysia, both ministries have collaborated to look for innovators via a reality TV series production. It's like Shark Tank, but Malaysian version. So having gone on ground, and because normally, well, being in a ministerial position, I suppose it's a rare opportunity for, you know, or everyday Joe to pitch to ministers. So what was your take on seeing the potential that you've seen from all these innovators that were presented your way? Maybe Wabi Rafizi can start first.
I wanted to have a revenge to be on the other side of pitching. So I spent the last 4 or 5 years pitching to people. So I wanted to have the revenge. I did have my revenge. It wasn't too much about I know this might sound brutal, but it wasn't too much about the innovations that were showcased in this reality TV. We were looking from a much higher perspective of changing society's behavior and apprehension towards innovation and commercialization. It's really much about reaching out to your regular households, so that we inspire one whole new generation who thinks that they can change the world by having an idea. Both Lee Kang and I had to do it for the first season, and I don't think I will do it again, because recording is like 5 hours per session, per episode, and while most probably I think people thought that it was done very quickly, myself, Lee Kang, and all our colleagues, senior officials from the ministry, have to put up to going back at 2 o'clock every night, trying to do it and pull it off. But we are very encouraged with the reception. The first episode was watched by over 1 million people, and that's by Malaysian standard, that's huge, because we thought that we could only reach out to about 200,000 people, and that was good enough because talking and showcasing what you could do with your idea every week to 200,000 households, that's good. But the first one was 1 million, and so far the feedback has been really good. And is that one component that perhaps was overlooked before, that both of us can do better? Mainstreaming innovation and product development, bring it down to the level that can connect and motivate a student, a pensioner, I think that is necessary while we also put all the other components in the ecosystem. And if this all work, what we hope for is, a Malaysian society who is very positive-minded, who really thinks that we can really go to the moon. Whether or not we go to the moon is a different thing. But, those of us who have been in startups environment, at least I told myself and I told my team to always go for the moonshot, because that's how it started. Because we may never reach the moonshot, but we will certainly land much higher than going on business as usual. And that's the whole idea about Innovaton.
Thank you, YB Rafizi. YB Chang, 1 minute and a half left. Your words of encouragement to the innovators and, of course, the industry players as a whole. What do you hope, this year's MCY could probably be a game changer to a lot more, the innovation ecosystem in the future?
Well, I think just be yourself and don't think overly high about yourself or overly low about yourself. I think in Malaysia, I have seen a lot of talented innovators, and I'm sure in this room there are a lot. And
focus on the product. Focus on the product.
Yeah. Well, I would like to congratulate those who have won the award, and mostly we are committed to help all of these innovators to commercialize, and with the help of Ministry of Economy, I'm sure we can flourish.
In his last 20 seconds, the last speech,
yeah,
for higher funding this year.
Yeah. No, but we have been doing this at MCY, and I think the outcome was really good, and I'm sure with the government's commitment of this commitment of this new government, I'm sure we can do better in years to come. And once again, thank you very much for all the innovators for your participation and also your innovation. Thank you.
You have good generals. Ladies and gentlemen, a round of applause to Yang Berhormat Chang Lee Kang, Yang Berhormat Rafizi Ramli. Thank you so much for this ministerial dialogue. We would like to invite both YB ministers back to their seats as we are about to witness a launch of a brand new business matching website. Once again, ladies and gentlemen, a round of applause to both honorable ministers for joining the ministerial dialogue. So, a strong relevance to the points that were shared by our ministers in the dialogue just now is, of course, also to include a robust ecosystem for innovators to create and prosper. So, if I may request for your attention to the main stage again, as we are going to unveil a brand new look to the MCY Biz Matching website, and how this is going to be a game changer to our innovators, to our SME business community, and to the strategic partners. Let's have a look. There you have it, ladies and gentlemen. A round of applause to the launch of the MCY Biz Matching Portal. So what was once a conventionally catalogued website has now been revolutionized into a business matching module, and it was created to provide the opportunities for researchers and startup business owners to introduce their products to investors and strategic partners. You can log on to mcyportal.mosti.gov.my. Ladies and gentlemen, we are set to announce that YB Rafizi is now going to attend another official matter. Please give him a round of applause once again. Thank you, YB, for your unwavering support to MCY 2023. So we hope to have more collaborations between these two ministries, and thank you again for your inspirational words to all our innovators, to all our industry players. And YB Chang will be sending off YB Rafizi, and we are ready for our next session after this. Of course, thank you again to the Ministry of Economy for being a part of MCY 2023, where a lot was unveiled when it comes to providing a robust ecosystem for innovation. We would like to request for our delegates to kindly take your seats as we are starting the next segment shortly. All right, ladies and gentlemen, there you have it. We've concluded the ministerial dialogue, and we hope you've got a lot from what was discussed. And something exciting is coming up, as we are going to celebrate our innovators who have revolutionized their products and have a lot of interesting and beneficial information to share to everyone. So if I may share a bit more information about MCY Biz Matching Platform. So this new website is, of course, user-friendly, and it can support a larger dissemination of information, and it makes commercialization a lot easier. And this is this also acts as a platform to connect researchers and their strategic partners for a more conducive and effective ecosystem environment ecosystem. So the module business matching is the game changer in this website. So once again, you can log on to mcyportal.mosti.gov.my. We would like to request for everyone to remain seated as we are ready to move on to the next session of today's conference. So a lot of exciting things are happening this next 2 days. We have a series of conference happening starting at 12, and of course we have a youth forum that's happening tomorrow. And you can also watch this summit on Facebook FB Live. And aside from that, everyone's also looking forward to witness the official launch that's going to be graced by the Prime Minister tomorrow.